Hi there, it's Cindy Pope at the Cool Tools Studio. I'm here to introduce you to the Silhouette Portrait Kit, which includes everything you need to get started in making beautiful jewelry using the Silhouette machine. So here are some examples of things that I've made with my Silhouette. This one I rolled out textured sheet using a Cool Tools texture, and these ones I created my own textures, and I'm using silver, bronze, and copper. This one has a bee etched onto it. And this one has a very detailed pattern. And this one was my first Phoenix project where I did cutouts. And this is also Phoenix. And this is also Phoenix. So, and these are some of my favorites. This is a very detailed project that's tiny with texture. And these ones over here, I'm making vinyl textures based on my drawings and fabric textures. And these are some of the ones I made using that technique. I wanted to introduce you to the Portrait Silhouette Kit and what comes with it. So we have our large rolling frames that have 1, 1.5, up to 5. So you can use it to make bezels. I have a silicone rolling mat, a tile, Protect-A-Film, a brayer, a really lovely new long tissue blade, the Smoothies brush, a etching tool to etch patterns onto the clay, a manual blade. This is a new blade, pink top, and it also comes with an auto blade. My preference is the manual blade. And finally, the kit also includes Rejuvenate, which is a formula that will make your clay a little bit more flexible for the silhouette, and it also rejuvenates the clay that is tired and overused. This formula was developed by Cindy Silas. Okay, let's go ahead and cut a project on the Silhouette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Protect-A-Film on to protect the mat and to make sure my clay, which is Phoenix, is really going to stick well. And my clay on the screen is 3 inches down and 3 inches over, so I'm going to put this at about maybe 1.5. And what we do with the portrait is we do a little guide box to tell us exactly where to put that clay. And it's just a little line on the screen. And you got to make sure when you pull this up that the Protect-A-Film sticks down. So I'm going to load this right where this line is. It's the third line over, and I'm locking it up against that, and then I hit the load unload button. And it's loading it right where it needs to be. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a guide box, and this etching tool that I have in here is going to draw the line. So what happens is there is a little line showing where, if you have the light on it and you look down, there's a little line showing exactly where you should place the clay. And so I just place it exactly where the machine thinks it is. And I'm going to take my roller. I'm going to make sure it's really, really well attached. Okay. So I have a little bit of etching on this, but it's mostly cutting. So I've got some etching I'm going to do, and I'm also going to do a little cut test. So why don't I do the cut test first? I'd always recommend, if you take my step-by-step silhouette class, I always recommend a little test cut when you first get going with the silhouette. It's really helpful. So I'm going to take the blade out, the pen out. And the blade is going to be, each setting has a blade depth. I'm going to go at about 8. This is 2.5 cards. And then you put it down here. And then I am looking on the screen and I see only the part that is lit up is going to get cut. And we're going to take a scalpel just to make sure it cut all the way through. And if it didn't, we would just make the blade at a higher level. Ooh, perfect. I might go a little bit higher, maybe 8.5. I'm going to push it back in. And first now I'm going to take the blade out because I did a test, but I always etch first, and this is the etcher. And as soon as you're done with etching or cutting, take whatever the tool is out, because invariably I will leave the blade in when I'm trying to use the etcher. And what this is doing, we're going to do a leaf print and cutout. And so I'm cutting 4 copies, and so the cutouts from one you can put as an overlay on the other. So it's kind of giving you a second project. And I'm going to send it one more time. So this is just a little mark on the clay that'll show me where I'm going to put the pieces I cut out. I'll show you when we construct. And I love to watch it work because it's doing just what I told it to do. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's etched the little leaf place on there. So I'm going to take this off, and now we're ready to cut. We've already done a test cut, so we know our blade at 8.5 is going to work. I'm going to place it all the way in and close it up. And then I'm going to go to the cutting part of this, and I'm just going to send it, and we're going to watch it cut. So it's all cut, and I'm going to unload it, just the down arrow. Okay, so I've got a tissue blade, and I've pulled up the protective film up to around the mat. And again, this is a brand new mat. It's very sticky. So be really careful, but I'm holding with my wrists touching the mat and just moving really slowly to bring up the protective film. And you see I'm just itching it, so don't go too fast. And don't try to take the clay off the top, because then a lot of times you have a problem with it. So once you've got it done, you can just pull it. And now I'm going to dump it off onto my tile, which is my preferred work surface. And this one cut all the way through, so I'm going to have to get the protective film off the back. So pay attention. This one didn't. Only that first one stuck. So I'm going to get my tissue blade again. Try not to cut myself. and just get a little bit of a start, and then you'll be able to pull it right off. There we go. People have tried to fire it with that on or join it, and it doesn't work. So what I want you to do is, when you take these parts out, try to get all the, not to turn these upside down, because we're going to try to place them back on another piece, and it's kind of like a puzzle. So if you turn the pieces upside down, it'll be harder to place it on the next one. And boy, it cut nice. It's coming out really nice, which is good. So look what we made. And when you have flexible clay, it comes off pretty easily. I still support it as I pull it away, but you see that was pretty easy to remove. And this one, I'm going to make sure I take the pieces out and make sure I don't turn them upside down. And you'll see in a second why. Okay, so I wanted to review what we did. What we did is we cut all the cut lines and cut out these pieces using the blade. And using the engraving tool, we put a mark on these ones that don't have cutouts, so I can add the pieces I cut out here onto the leaf. So this engraving is just giving us a place to put it. Often we are engraving a very detailed pattern. Okay, we're ready to etch on Aureus now. I prepared a piece of clay that's 2.5 cards, and I added the Rejuvenate to make it flexible. And I'll show you how flexible it is. Lovely flexible and beautiful surface. So I put protective film on here already, and I'm going to load this in and push the load button. I have the engraving tool in here because I need to make a box on the protective film to tell me exactly where this clay needs to sit. So we're going to go ahead and send. And if you can't see it, then I would etch it again. I can see it pretty good from here. And I actually usually make my box on the page a little bit smaller than my clay, just to make sure everything's gonna etch in the right place. So if you see lines outside, and this is where you want to use your brayer to make sure it's really, really rolled down. And because it's so flexible and I use the Rejuvenate, I'm hoping it will not come up. Okay, now we're going to remove this, and I'm going to do my test cut. Once you are familiar with your machine and the clay and you've done some practicing, you don't necessarily have to do a test cut, but I always recommend when you're starting just a little test cut so you don't ruin the whole bit. And this is just a little circle. And I'm going to make sure it's going to come up. Oh, yeah, I can tell right now. I don't even have to remove it. It cut perfectly. This thing cuts like a dream, I gotta say. I'm a little enamored with the portrait. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the blade, and I'm going to etch a pattern. So I'm putting the engraver back in. If you ever realize in the beginning that you've forgotten to change tools, you can always hit the pause button. It's a really helpful button. But my rule, which I don't always follow, is always take the tool out when it's done with its action. So this takes a little bit of time to load, but we are going to go ahead and etch a pattern. And when you send a pattern, you're going to see a time on the screen, and it's going to tell you how long it's going to be etching. This time was about 3 minutes, 45 seconds. You have to count on it being twice as long as that. I'm not sure why, but it's always really pretty close as twice as much. So this is going to take about 6 minutes. Okay, so we're about a minute away from completing our etching, so I wanted you to kind of see the last little bit. And it's making really precise, small lines to fill in a design. I just find the way this machine works amazing. And the software, in addition, allows you to do this type of thing where other machines don't necessarily allow you to do the designing that our artists want to do. And my step-by-step silhouette class will teach you how to design and how to cut, and really is a very comprehensive class. And really anything you can do in bronze or copper, you can do in silver, and vice versa. So I definitely recommend you get some Aureus or something and just give it a try with that, because I probably have, I'd say, $6 worth of clay on the mat. And that really makes the whole process less stressful. And what happens is it comes out, and then I will brush off the dust and reveal the pretty pattern underneath. And this is actually a pattern I designed in a silhouette class on CraftCast called Boot Camp. Here we go. So there we go, and then I'm going to brush it off, and you'll see the pattern emerging. I have a couple students, the first time it finished, they were a little stressed out because they didn't realize that when you brush it off, and you got to brush really carefully, because if you don't get all the dust, it's going to fire in place. But isn't that beautiful? It's a swirly pattern. And this file will be available on the Cool Tools website for you to practice with. So I'm done with this. I'm going to take my engraving tool off because I'm ready to cut. And I'm going to use 8.5 blade because that's what we did our test cut with, and it worked perfectly. You want to make sure it's all the way down in the holder. And here we go to cutting. Okay, so I'm going to unload. And what I've done is I've made this, I like open earrings, but I've made a second, I call it a byproduct piece. So when you're cutting a whole lot of something, you can use the cutout for something else. So this is a little stone setting, and I'll show you how that works. So I've got my very sharp tissue blade. They are dangerous, so be careful. And I pull, because this is a brand new mat and it's extremely sticky, I'm pulling it up to the edge of where the clay is. It removes, this is the second time using it. By the third or fourth time, it's less sticky. It's already less sticky this time. So what I'm going to do is I put the tissue blade underneath, and tissue blades are dangerous, so be really, really careful. I recommend you move very slowly, and I'm putting my wrists down, supporting, and I'm just moving in little wiggly motions and pressing down on this mat so it doesn't slip. And once you're through the clay, you can pull it up. And then I turn it out to the clay and press these pieces out or push them out with my scalpel. This is coming out perfectly. This is going to be a little bezel for one of those flat back stones I love to use. And this is a really pretty open piece. So this one didn't come right out, so I'm going to I don't want to mar the surface, so I'm just kind of using the flat back and it comes right out. I'm going to do the same thing with my little circle. You see how nicely it cuts. Better than I could cut by hand for sure. But it is my design, and this is something I can't remember if I drew this or designed it digitally, but a lot of my designs are from drawings I make. So I'll put a hole here and a hole here. And I don't normally have my tiny earring holes cut with a silhouette. I like to do them by hand. And then this one, I will do bezel setting on a little stone. So I hope you enjoy this, and let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.